I'm going to read you a couple of sentences, and I'm going to call on one of you to summarize what this sentence says. Eschew all conglomerations of flatulent virility, June babblement, and let your extemporaneous discantations and unpremeditated expiations of intelligibility without Xenophonical bombast. The translation needs to speak clearly, but the big point is you have to get the first word, which was eschew. You have to know that that meant shun, and then you can apply some of it to this. But if you miss the first word, you missed it all. And this happens to our kids all the time. They often say that hearing lectures is like listening to foreign language, even though it's their language. It's either too fast, or it has too many big words, or they miss the key words. Now, read this and answer the last question.
No, it doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
Well, actually, Lincoln's produced by the government.
Reading this is exhausting. I cannot maintain attention to what I'm reading because I'm too busy trying to figure out what the words are, so I don't understand what I'm reading. And I'm getting exhausted after reading 5 sentences. I've had it.
That's what our kids tell us all the time. I'm tired. Now, sometimes they've learned to use that as a wonderful excuse, but sometimes I think it's very real, because when you have to invert and change that and focus to the extent that you try and find the meaning, you're so busy decoding you can't find the meaning. It is exhausting.
Frankly, I gave up, Sally. I mean, after several words, I really didn't care. And you didn't tell me why I was supposed to do this, so I just said, I don't need to do this.
Which a lot of the kids do. Also, they go down. How many of you went straight to the last question and then figured out how to answer that question? Good problem solvers do that. Any other reactions?
I went down and I read the questions, and the first one, how many have I seen? And when I went back, the reversal might not even have been the same as the ones I saw the first time. It was absolutely... Make up an answer. And I looked at each other and said, like, make it up.
But that's what we have to be aware of, that so much of the written material appears like that to our kids. It is exhausting to try and plow through all that and still feel that there's so much more to do that you can't do it. Now you've got a writing speed that has some typical writings that our kids have done over the years. Let's go down to when elephants have been hunted for hundreds of years. Some of you may remember this young man who was marvelous at film animation, and today he's working in film animation, but he had no sense of the English language. Except I love the way he spells example, E-G-G-Z-A-M-F-U-L. Elephants have been hunted for hundreds of years, for example, for their meat, their hides for clothing. The elephant's tusks, ivory, have been used for weapons such as the tip of a spear, also jewelry and piano keys for piano. What do you diagnose from that?
As far as formulating what to say and the order it should go in and how it fits together, it's very disorganized.
There's no English language to it. It's almost as though this child was from another country.
They're not sentences, they're pieces.
And they're not even phrases that hold together. And yet, he's a visual thinker, a most marvelous artist. All right, turn over to the back. You can see I like Battlestar Galactica because I like science fiction, and it's exciting and it's fun. It's a lot like Star Wars. It's an adventure show. Does this child seem to have good command of phonics or sound symbols? No. What does he seem to have working for him?
He seems to know some of the letters that would go in the word, so he puts those down in sort of any order that comes to him.
Now, this was done a number of years ago, and this young man went on and became a graduate student and extremely talented at computer work. This next one graduated from Brown University. Yet, look at this writing. I went to Williamsburg and celebrated my mom's and dad's anniversary. I had a good time. I think they did too. I think my sisters had a good time. They went shopping and fed ducks. Now, with a computer on his lap and a fine brain, this young man graduated college. But it shows the degree of difficulty.
I found in the high school that sometimes the students have a lot more to say, but just the physical act of writing or the being annoyed that they can't remember the spelling of a word, they'll either skip the word or just stop writing because the task has become too difficult. So they really have a lot more to say, although they don't put it down on paper. We make a judgment about a student based on the fact that we know that the information is there, but they can't give it back. And so we're frustrated, you know, because we want to get the information out of them. They're frustrated because they want to give it back to us. And you end up with frustrated people all around.
Now, the first one at the top,
Poor motor skills. The person has difficulty forming the letters. They're not over toward the left-hand side of the page.
and many of those kids hold a pen like this. If you've ever tried writing with this, your upper arm really hurts when you are trying to do that. Christine, what do you do when you work in occupational therapy with kids?
We'll be looking at how they hold the pen or pencil, whether or not they're using the right kind of pressure, and if they're using their whole arm as opposed to just moving their fingers.
Which is what they're doing. And you use pencil grip, things to help them hold it correctly. We're going to pass out garden gloves. And I'd like you to put on both, please. Because what I really want to do is have you know what for some kids is like a disconnect between the hands and the brain. We call it hand coordination problems, visual motor problems, but it's like their hands are alien to them. And yet we demand that they pass out the papers, we demand that they cut and they paste and they do all these things in school, and very often they'll say, I don't like to do that. When a child says, I hate coloring, or I hate to use scissors, usually the I hate means I'm having an awfully hard time doing it. So, that's what we want to stimulate today, is what it's like when you have several children in your classroom that have this problem. So, Helen and Fiona are going to pass out little exercises for you. And we're very interested in how you manage them.
Do you lift the bag? How do you get it? I never had a steel bag
Just real brute force.
Not doing good. I give up. My hands are too sore. My fingers hurt. And the joints in my fingers hurt. Well, it's one of the reasons I find that our kids work well with big objects, hard objects, like wood, because it's very there and they can go against it. They have some kind of border or parameter that it's there. The same thing with very big products. Mark, I know you like doing very big products with the kids and have accomplished that. They can not only see it, but for those with the clumsy hands, it makes such a big difference. I want to go now into what happens with left-right confusion. How do you see it in the classroom? Or let's start over at that table with Steve. How do you see the kids getting mixed up in space?
Usually in dance, the left and right is important because you have to start off with either the left or the right foot. So in dances, to simplify things for kids, is I always start on the same foot. If I want to focus them to learn just the right foot, I'll make sure every dance step begins and every phrase begins on that right foot. So every time it's repeating, I have to do the right through the dance maybe 20 times. They have to repeat, I have to start on my right. And if they step on the left, we have to stop the dance and start over again. And by the end of that dance, they have learned their right foot.
I find that that students have a very difficult time when you give them a direction, even a one-step direction, to go to get a piece of paper, to go down the hall, they seem to get lost, and they can't get from point A to point B in one quick motion. They walk sideways, they walk backwards. The language of math requires a lot of directionality, and I often see when they're asked positional to define positional words, greater than, less than, also up and down when we're talking about objects, geometric shapes. We do a lot of things with Velcro, and we have a chart for evolution. And the children, I'll ask them to put something on the chart, and I'll say, give them the direction of what column it goes in, and oftentimes they'll go in the exact opposite column.
Oh, we are oftentimes in the theater and we need some materials that are upstairs in my classroom. So I'll have to send the student all the way from the theater to the second floor to get something in my room. And it's real diagnostic at the beginning of the year to string together a set of instructions and to see how much the kid can keep in his head, and also follow the left and right, I'll have to act it out.
With the youngest children, when we're starting to learn directions, we found even such simple things as beside or in front or over and under, we need to teach with their own bodies first. And we'll get chairs, stand beside your chair, stand between chairs. Then maybe give them a teddy bear or a doll or something and have them move that. Eventually they can look at cards and get the idea of what's on top, what's on the bottom. But to try to understand it in their own self first seems to help. Right and left, it will say raise your right hand, and they'll look and then they'll go like this. So that's a bit much for a lot of my students to begin with. Oh, for spatial understanding, a lot of our children get too close, get in someone else's space. So we say, this space is my space, that space is your space, from head to toe and all around. I'll stay in my space, you stay in your space. This space belongs to only me.